What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Bronx Pinstripe Show. Aaron Judge is the 16th captain, of the New York Yankees, and I'm going to try and not cough through the microphone this entire episode as I'm getting over the flu. Scott, what's up?
What's up, man? How you doing? I'm glad we got some really good news today. Actually, Aaron Judge being the captain before we recorded, which is amazing. Doesn't usually happen this way, but man, when I saw Jeter at that press conference, I was like, yes, something's happening. It's happening, and I can't. Of course, Jeter's going to be there for that, but that's a good sign to me that Derek Jeter is going to be somewhat more involved with the organization. I would be surprised if we didn't see more of that. With him coming up for something like this. So yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Pretty awesome.
Because Jeter, even if Judge was going to be named captain and Jeter was still an exec with the Marlins, he's not showing up for the Judge press conference if he's still with the Marlins. And also Jeter's not showing up if Judge isn't being named captain at this press conference.
That's the thing. But even him not being an executive at in Florida and the Judge thing happening, I don't know. He's just been distant. So it's just a good sign. There's a lot of really good things happening with them. I have a feeling he's going to, just my gut is telling me that he's going to take some kind of a role within the organization at some point. Maybe it's not this year, but I'd say in the next, within the next 5 years, he's part of the organization again in some capacity.
Well, if they want to win another championship, then yeah, they better do that.
Yeah, just get the blood in. Just get the good juju and bring Jeter in. But no, it was pretty awesome. You could tell that the Judge was super humbled, and just interesting to hear how it went down with that conversation with him and Hal, and a little bit more detail behind that phone call, that it was so late at night, and that this was brought up at the end of it as well. So just really good insight into how the dynamic was of that conversation.
The reason I said question mark as to the 16th captain is because there is differing sources on how many captains of the Yankees there has been. We're going to repost the Brief History Captain episode that I did a couple years ago that explains why there's a different information and why some guys are counted and not counted. Because for the longest time, the Yankees, even the Yankees official website, listed Jeter as the 11th captain in team history. Now, obviously, between Jeter and Judge, there's been no captains, and now they're saying Judge is the 16th captain, and there haven't been 5 extra captains in between. So I guess they're acknowledging different sources now. But definitely check out that episode, which we're going to repost again on Thursday for all of the backstory there. But yeah, this is something that we've been saying since they freaking installed the judges' chambers on the first road trip in 2017.
That was it, man. It was
just slap the C, just slap the metaphorical C on his chest at that point. You don't do that for someone you don't see being an eventual captain type of your team. I think we all wanted it to play out perfectly, where the Yankees win a championship, Judge is on the championship team, and then he can have that championship pedigree and blah, 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 blah. And then that's how he's going to be named captain. But you sign him to a 9-year deal, biggest annual value in position player history. This had to happen. I didn't know if it was going to happen at this press conference or, when spring training kicks off next year, but I knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, it seemed like it was inevitable. So, the perfect story doesn't always happen. Obviously we all want it, but there have been plenty. I mean, we mentioned this, but Mattingly didn't win a title, captain of the Yankees. You gotta do it, especially when you sign that guy for the duration of his playing years. In theory, he's got to be that guy. I mean, he has all the qualities that you have that you want in a captain. So I'm happy they did it. I'm happy they got it out there. I think it was a good time to do it, and let's just go into the rest of the off season and into spring training with that being defined, and I think it helps everybody just kind of move forward.
On the captaincy thing, we were kind of talking about this before we recorded. Doesn't sound like this was a mandate from Judge. I don't think he would ever say you need to name me captain, because that kind of defeats the purpose of it, right? Like you don't want to ask to be named captain. You want the organization to name you captain.
It's certainly not it's not his MO. That's not his style at all. He's definitely more of a reserved guy that does, everything I know. Obviously, none of us know Aaron Judge personally, but the way that we know him and the way that we have watched his career and the way that he's carried himself is that everything along the way he's wanted to earn. He's wanted to, he's done with the performance on the field and off the field for the way he's carried himself. So yes, I don't think that he ever said anything. If his agent maybe in the behind the scenes be like, hey, if you guys are going to do it, maybe it'd be a good idea to do it now. Who knows? Like that conversation could have been dropped down. But also the Yankees knew it was going to happen. So why wait at this point? There's no precedent for, what has to happen on the field. So why not do it right now? And they made the right decision. This was the right move.
Exactly. Why wait? I agree. There's no point in waiting until next year or 2 years after that once you sign him to the 9-year deal. But it is interesting if you just do the comparison to Jeter, because Jeter signed his massive contract with the Yankees in 2001, and then they didn't name him captain until 2003. And some of the reasons that have been written over the years as to why they waited was because of some of the other veterans on the team that were still there with Jeter, that even though Jeter was, an unofficial captain at that point, you also had guys like Paul O'Neill and David Cohen on the roster that also played an unofficial captain type in their own right. Everyone leads in different ways, and they had the Yankees of those eras had a mix of those different types of leaders. And now I guess you could say the same thing about this current Yankees team. If you look at the different leaders within the team being Judge, I would say Rizzo has become a leader, even though he's been here for a short amount of time and his contract isn't that long. I think he's probably a leader in that clubhouse. I guess Cole's like the pitching staff leader from that sense. You kind of are shaking your head a little bit, Yeah, maybe Rodon will step into that role. Who knows?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, you'd believe that Cole's that guy. You believe that Cole's that guy, but at the same time, in the clubhouse, I think he is that guy. I'm not going to talk shit about him right now. There's no reason for that. There's no reason for the Cole slander at this point in the offseason.
On the Aaron Judge captain / Carlos Rodon signing episode, you don't want to talk a little shit about Garrett Cole? Come on.
It's fine. It's fine. No, I'm sure he is. He does command that respect on the inside of the clubhouse, and as he should. He's a veteran guy. But Rondon, I think, who we're going to talk about a lot today, is a outspoken, fiery. Like he's all of the above as well.
I think Cole's a leader from a nerd pitching standpoint.
He certainly is. I mean, he takes guys aside. You see it all the time. You see him take the guys on the pitching staff aside and constantly talking to them when it's not his day to pitch. So he absolutely is. He's a vocal leader inside, and he leads by example. I think also in the preparation and the things that he does to that lead up to a start as well. So his work ethic, the methodical nature, the way that he handles his business is certainly a you can look at that and take some really good things away from it.
Who would you say, are there any other leaders? Because I think an underrated leader is Stan.
Yeah, he's got that veteran presence. I think any veteran guy that can add a different level of experience and layer it in has that veteran. And Stanton's more quiet, I guess, but he's just such an imposing figure. I think he's kind of a mentor to Judge as well, just because he was, kind of Aaron Judge before Aaron Judge. Expectations, similar in the way that they play. So yeah, I think that he's certainly one of those guys. And then, just the catching position, like you see those guys, and Higgy's a backup catcher, but he's vocal inside. He's got a really good relationship with a lot of the guys inside there. I think that he's one of those quiet guys that is, you don't think of as necessarily a leader, but he's got that vocal presence inside because he does have good relationships. And I think that's one of the key parts. You have to have good relationships with everybody or the majority of the team for you to be looked at as a leader of sorts. So I think there's a number of guys that have those good relationships.
Should the Yankees re-sign Brett Gardner for two reasons? One, they still need a left fielder. And number two, he could be another veteran leader in the clubhouse.
No, they shouldn't.
I'm
surprised it's taking this long though for that to come up, to be honest, for the Brett Gardner, because we haven't heard much about him. At some point, I guess we're just going to hear that he's retired and will come back as a Yankee in some way for some appreciation day or something like that. But yeah, he just rode out into the sunset. Didn't really say much.
Pop quiz. How many seasons has he not been on the Yankees?
2. It's just
One.
one. It's just one. I was gonna say one, but then I felt like you were trying to trick me. I was like, no, it's one.
But like I couldn't remember if it was 1 or 2. It was a long 2022, I guess. So another thing that I love about like today, baseball, New York baseball, like today specifically Wednesday, is like you woke up to the news that the Mets signed Carlos Correa, and you're like, wait, what's going on here? I thought Carlos Correa was a San Francisco Giant. It's like, no, his medicals fell through. Scott Boras and Steve Cohen were having Mai Tais on the beach in Hawaii, got a little drunk, and Steve Cohen's like, fuck it, I'll spend another $300 million. He can play third base. And you're like, holy crap, Steve Cohen's going to spend $500 million on annual payroll for his team. His response is, who the heck cares? I'm worth $9 billion. It doesn't matter. Fans, please show up to the ballpark. So you got that going on. And then 5 hours later, you got the Yankees naming Judge captain. It's just like, I don't know. It's a little like, not that this was planned, obviously, because this press conference was planned a while ago. And I don't think Steve Cohen was specifically trying to steal thunder from the Yankees press conference, but I kind of like the duality of it, right? Like it's kind of fun.
It's fine. Like, I can't hear anymore. And we've talked about the dynamic between Yankees fans and Mets fans on the show before, and how we both personally feel about this. Like I'm one that doesn't, if the Mets do well, great. Like I hope they do. I hope they do well. I hope we, meet in the World Series, because that would be great for everybody. It'd be a fun series. But here's the narrative that that needs to end. I have some family members that are Mets fans as well. And I just can't hear them talk about the Mets in the same way that they have as like this lovable team and all that. No, they are a group of assassins now. They are exactly the reason, all of the reasons why Mets fans hated the Yankees for such a long time, for buying championships and doing all that. This is exactly what they have become. Wait, but put it on a multiplier, because they're doing it at a much higher level than the Yankees really ever did, because of the amount of money that's being spent, and long-term money too. So they're not this little like lovable, like, oh, it's the Mets anymore. Like, no, they're a fucking juggernaut now with all-stars almost at every position. And they're going out and paying more money for guys than other teams are doing, and taking calculated risks, I guess, with injuries that have popped up for long-term deals, like a guy with like Correa. But they're no longer this sidebar of a team. Like they have a ton of high level players over on that right now, and they purchased every single one of them.
I mean, they're damn near an all-star team when you look up and down the roster, and just the high profile talent, not just like obviously the expensive talent, but just the high profile talent on that team is out of control.
So that's great. So just like, as long as that's understood between the two fan bases here, as long as we're not playing this card of like, oh, we're the Mets, like, oh, you guys are the big bad. No. That is gone. That was a narrative for a while with Red Sox fans and Yankees fans for a while too. But then the Red Sox came up and met them.
That was always bullshit too, because
it was always bullshit. But at the same time,
because
the Yankees, it was a point. I used to get into so many arguments with buddies of mine.
It was a no-win argument as a Yankees fan, because the Yankees always spent the most money. It didn't matter if the Red Sox were the number 2 money and it was only a few $1 million less. The Yankees were always spending more, so that no matter what, they could always say that. But now the Mets are spending $100 million more than the next highest team, and they're paying $100 million plus in tax money. Okay. Yeah. And Steve Cohen's response to it is, who the heck cares? If you're going to make the move, make the move. I can't help but respect that. That is the exact statement Steve Cohen should be saying in that instance. He's not shying away from it.
No.
He's owning up to it. Yeah, this is what I want to do with my baseball team that I own. I'm curious what other owners think about this, because there was didn't he go through some shit about like getting approval from the rest of the owners to even buy the Mets? And so there was this fear. No, but there was this fear, I think, that this would happen, is that he's going to, like, we joked about the Steve Cohen tax. The Steve Cohen tax is $293 million. He's spending $383 million. Okay. So the Steve Cohen, he can't even see the Steve Cohen tax in the rearview mirror. So I think this was a fear that some of the other owners had, because the last thing other owners, especially owners of like these lower payroll and middle payroll teams, want to have happen is for Steve Cohen to go out there, spend $500 million in payroll when it's all said and done with tax, and still make money at the end of the day. Because their claim to the Players Association is they cried poor. You remember like all the shit that we went through during the pandemic and MLB owners not opening up their books and everything? It's like, oh no, we're barely scraping by. It's like, no, TV revenues are 10 or 11 billion dollars higher than it's ever been. Stadium revenue, now that capacity is back and everything, is through the roof. And especially like the Mets, some of the highest ticket prices in the league, some of the highest concession prices in the league. I mean, they're going to make up this in New Jersey. I mean, half the roster is in New Jersey. They're going to make up half, all these New Jersey sales in 2 homestands. So I almost feel like he's throwing a wrench in everything, but I kind of like it.
Yeah, I think it's going to the side of where the fans are. Spend the damn money. You guys have it, spend it. And Cohen's like, yep, it's exactly, you're right, fans. This is exactly what we should be doing. So I'm gonna lead the way and show them how to do it. So yeah, totally agree.
So Ilya just put in our chat. Ilya just put in our chat, 4 owners voted against Cohen's purchase of the Mets, including the White Sox, Angels, Reds, and Diamondbacks. I'm a little surprised at the Angels because they've spent money historically. Reds and Diamondbacks, fine. Interesting that the White Sox voted no, because the White Sox, who just signed Andrew Benintendi to 5 years and $75 million, the most money they've ever committed to a free agent. $75 million, which isn't even half of the Mets'
Is that what Justin
starting
Verlander's
rotation
getting for this year?
I think that's Justin Verlander's private jet fund this year, okay, is the most money that the White Sox have ever extended to a free agent.
That's
a
crazy.
Chicago-based team, not a freaking, Kansas City Royals or some, Tampa Bay Rays team that isn't in a big market. Like Chicago baseball, some of the best baseball markets in the country is in Chicago.
That's probably also because they're like, we're kind of the Mets of Chicago. So if you go out there and start spending all of this money, people are going to look at us and be like, okay, you're next. You're the you're not the Cubs, you're the White Sox. Whereas the Mets,
but $75 million is nothing. $75 million is nothing.
No, I know, but I think if them voting against it, it's basically essentially like, I know what's coming. He's going to spend a fuck ton of money, and it's gonna put pressure on us to do the same thing, or at least the fans are going to put pressure on it. If Steve Cohen's doing it with the Mets, why can't the second franchise in a major city do it also?
Yeah, so the whole thing, how that went down was pretty crazy. One of the biggest stories of the offseason, obviously. And San Francisco somehow worming their way out of that contract. I don't know. It kind of struck me as when they signed Correa, it almost seemed like a reaction to not getting judged, because didn't it happen very shortly after? So it's almost like they woke up the next morning. It's like when you wake up from like having a bender and you look at your text messages and you're like, oh shit, what did I do? It's like the Giants woke up the next morning. They're like, oh crap, we signed Carlos Correa, that a-hole, to 13 years. How do we get out of this?
And I also, when you look at what San Diego did with Bogarts too, and just, the status of, or the current status of that division, you're adding one guy. And is that really going to make you a competitive team in that division? No, it's not. So obviously they found something in the medicals that allowed them to say, hold on a minute, wait, let's rethink this. And clearly they were going to try to get out of the contracts. And that's when Boris went back to the well and be like, hey, Uncle Stevie, where are we? These guys are dicking around. And because he signed for less money, less years, less money than the original San Francisco deal.
It was still a massive deal.
Still a massive deal, but it was less.
Steve Cohen seeing that as a discount. He's like, oh, you failed the physical. You failed the physical. Okay, we'll take off a year and $35 million, but still 12 years, $315 million.
It kind of shows you also though where the market was for Correa, and it's like the Giants well outpaid what the market was saying. Because if Cohen's going to the contract that he did, the market's not dictating, to be competitive with what the Giants had offered him. And maybe the physical,
well, especially after he comes out of the deal with the Giants, because now Steve Cohen knows. I mean, Cohen could have probably gotten him for less, frankly. Like, I
don't know, man. When you have a medical thing like that, first of all, every organization may look at the medicals differently, right? Like one may have an opinion on something that it's probably not an issue at all, but could be in 5-6 years, something like that. And some teams are just okay with that. So I really think that it was, maybe they identified that they well overpaid what the market was for this guy, and it just wasn't, and they're leaning on something that, probably isn't very big of a concern. That's my
But who's
guess.
signing Correa at this point? If it's not, so the Giants are out, and if the Mets are going to sign him, and they're looking around, it's like, well, Bogarts signed in San Diego, Turner signed in Philly, like who, and the Cubs got Swanson. So like who's in the shortstop market at that point?
The Yankees.
The Yankees, but like
I'm just saying, maybe. If Boris wanted to play that a little bit more, I don't know what the conversations were at any point. Sounds like they didn't really have many conversations about Correa.
Judge's first act as captain was to nix any Carlos Correa to the Yankees.
Send him to Queens if that's the case. Like, do not sign
and please, like nothing would round out this story more for me than Carlos Correa just being an absolutely trash third baseman. Just suck eggs at third base.
Yeah, that would be amazing. That would be great. I really don't wish for a lot of good things for him on the baseball field. I'm not going to go any further than that, but on the baseball field, like, hope he has a bad career after this at the plate. I really do. Hope his glove has multiple holes in it. Hopefully his footwork is dog shit next year and he gets fat. I hope all.
I'm not hoping for injuries. Like, I don't root for injuries.
I just want him to get
just
fat and just be bad.
Bad. Just bad. Just can't play third base. Suck at third base. And all the defensive metrics.
Hopefully he just thinks about it too much and can't translate from shortstop to third base. It's too
Do you
much.
remember? I want him to be Miguel Andujar reincarnated at third base.
I like Miguel.
Triple clutching on throws.
Way too much time. He has way too much time to think because it's a reactionary position. It's not a.
He's got 12 years to think. Yeah. Let's talk about Carlos Rodon. So this signing came down shortly after you did the podcast with Chris last week. Awesome interview. If you guys haven't checked it out, inside the Judge negotiations. And then you guys talked about Rodon and kind of teased that signing was going to be next. And I think it happened like 24 hours or 36 hours after that.
Chris was very confident that it was going to happen.
6 years, 162 million, which is 27 million on the luxury tax every year for those 6 years. I don't, this is not like a gross overpayment. I think this is, obviously where the market is dictating that players are signing for and pitchers are signing for. I know Chris was mentioning that the Yankees didn't want to maybe go to that 6th year, so I'm sure they were trying to go for that 5th year. But they were not in a position of leverage anymore. It's like when you sign Judge to $40 million a year in 9 years, you kind of give up your leverage in other free agent negotiations, don't you? Where it's like we've said this before. You have to double and triple down. You've got to do what Steve Cohen's doing and double down on your roster, because bringing back Judge at $40 million a year is status quo. That was status quo to last year. Correct. So unless you add pieces, you're back to where you started.
For sure. That is exactly right. And I think that they knew that. And it kind of goes down to the same principles that we're talking about with Cohen. Like, you got to go. You got to do the, if you're going this far in with a guy that's the cornerstone of your franchise, you need to take advantage of we've talked to this in exhaustion about the contracts. The first 4 years, the first 4 to 5 years of a contract, like a big one like that for Judge, you got to go all in. You got to win a championship in that window. I know we've talked about windows and they've been moving as the personnel changes, as things are adjusted, but there is a clear window, I think, with Judge and his physical presence and his prime. And you're looking at, probably 3 years of prime, 2 to 3 years of prime. And then very good after that is what you can hope for. And with a degrading scale as he's getting older, but those first 4 to 5 years, I'd say is that window for them. And they got to go to it. And if you can go for it in the first 2, then of course you do that. So there's no time to waste.
Yeah. And they've got to do more. We'll talk about that in a minute, but I really find this Rodon signing interesting because it's not a move that Cashman has done really since 2009 when he signed Burnett in addition to signing CeCe. They have not gone after to lock up that number 2 starter. And not that Rodon is even like, a traditional number 2. Like, he would be a number 1 on most of the teams that would have signed him. It's just, you have Garrett Cole. So Garrett Cole's starting opening day. Rodon's not starting opening day. But they have not gone after that high-priced second starter. They've tried to fill that second starter with controlled talent. through the form of either homegrown guys or trade acquisitions. Sonny Gray, James Paxton, Jameson Tyone, Frankie Montas. And I don't ever see them stopping trying to do that because that is still where you're going to get tremendous value. But I think Cashman realized, like, that is, it's been hit or miss for them. I mean, mostly miss for them. Like, not that the guys have been awful. I mean, I would say the Tyon one worked out. I think he probably had the least amount of expectations coming over Tyon, and that one has worked out. Time will tell on Montas. Sonny Gray obviously was a disaster, and Paxton was like, he was good for like a brief window, and then he was just injured. So it's been mostly miss when he's tried to do this. So now he's like, screw it. I'm just spending the money to lock up the top of the rotation.
Yeah, they had to do it. And you're right. That's it. Like this. There's no more. I mean, and when you look at Tyon was a reclamation project as well. Guy was came out, had very good pedigree. Was a guy that everybody expected to be a top pitcher, and then went through adversity. Obviously, the guy got cancer. He had injuries. Like there were a lot of things that he came back from. But he was one of those guys that Cashman looks around. It's like, okay, where can I find this reclamation project on the cheap? Get a good value and figure out, no more of that. Like go out there, get the guy that that can contribute. And looking back at a couple other pitching contracts that the Yankees were in on for similar to Rodon status, like could be a 1, but probably a 2 if there's like a clear number 1. 2 of them come to mind. Zach Wheeler was 5 for 118. And what year was this, guys? And then the other one that thank God we avoided was Patrick Corbin. And Corbin was 6 for 140.
Corbin was 2019, and then he obviously was a key piece to the Nationals championship, and then he's just fallen off a cliff.
Yeah, they went for it in the first few years, though. That's what they did. So like they're not gonna. It's a bad contract now because he's been a terrible pitcher over the last 2 years. But you're looking at that coming out into free agency. He was a similar comp, I'd say, in what people were expecting. And then when you look at that contract, this is an evolution of that contract. I almost looked at it as a precedent for that type of pitcher, and the Yankees had to go up. But he went 6 years, and Wheeler was 5 years. So there's some precedent to that level of pitcher, and I'd say Rodon is better than Corbin for sure, but probably similar to Wheeler, and that's in that sense, different types of pitchers, but comparable.
Yeah, Rodon is like he's fascinating because he's been so good the last 2 years. He's had injury history, and then if you look at his pitch mix, he's basically been a 2-pitch pitcher. 61% fastballs, 31% sliders, and they're both awesome pitches. It's gotten him to be an all-star each of the last 2 years and a Cy Young contender each of the last 2 years. But like if you look at his injury history dating back to 2016, in 2016 he missed 4 weeks with a wrist sprain. He fell on some dugout steps. Okay. 2017 missed 3 months with biceps tendonitis and then a month with shoulder trouble. He had surgery that off season. 2018 he missed the first 3 months rehabbing from that shoulder surgery. 2019 he made 7 starts and then needed Tommy John surgery. 2020 he missed 7 weeks with a sore shoulder, but he didn't actually miss time because of the pandemic. And then 2021, he missed 3 weeks with a sore shoulder over the course of 2 different IL trips. And then 2022, he did not miss any time, and it was his best year. But his numbers over 2021 and 2022 have been really, really good. So the injury history is concerning, but he has even talked to how his improved mechanics over the last 2 years have helped with that, and he thinks he's figured that out, and it's also led to an increase in velocity. And the fact that he did not get injured last year with San Francisco, I guess you got to take him on his word that, okay, the improved mechanics are going to help that shoulder. But like the thing that stands out there is the shoulder. It's like it's over the course of 6 years, 7 years, shoulder issues.
Yeah, I mean that is a concern. Obviously, I have concerns with the Yankees medical staff and the way that they go about looking and making sure that the CSI on pitchers' shoulders is a good thing.
But you know what? We can trust the Giants medical staff.
Okay. Well, But
I mean,
the Giants didn't resign.
they just no, I know, but they just figured out something with Correa that they didn't like, and they
No,
obviously
they
were
figured out a
okay.
way to get out of the contract is what they did. They didn't
Okay,
give a shit
so
about
it's
the
a
injury.
smart medical staff. Let's hire that guy.
Yeah, well, they also didn't re-sign Rondon. Every time I say his name, I want to put an N in there, by the way. I don't know if that's for everybody else too, but it's really hard for me to say Rodon. I always
because of what's his name? Who's the other Rondon? Who's the Rondon? No, but wasn't there a Rondon pitcher?
I don't know, but every time I want to say Rondon, but it's Rodon. I have to like catch myself every single time.
But San Francisco signed Rodon last offseason.
Now you're
Rodon. Rodon, is it Rodon?
It's not Rodon. It's Rodon.
Rodon?
Yeah. I have it as Rodon.
Rodon. Jesus.
I keep hearing Michael K. say
because
Rodon.
there's the little, it's a spicy O. The second O is spicy.
There's no N, and so many people say it like this. There's no N in the middle.
Yeah, I know that. I know that there is not, but my mouth wants to say it every single time.
Right. No, I know. I agree with you.
Does he have a nickname? Does Baseball Reference have a nickname listed for him?
Roto? Can we just call him Roto?
I like Roto.
Roto's not
Roto's
bad.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
get it going.
Cuff. Let's make sure the rotator cuff is in a good spot.
No nickname for him on Baseball Reference.
Okay. Window opportunity here. Something easier to come out of the mouth, please. So this guy is, I don't know. They missed it on Montas. That's the other thing. What have you done for me lately? You screwed that one up. There was a guy that was injured who literally just came off of a shoulder injury, traded for him, and then the shoulder injury was still a thing for the rest of the year. So you got to build back the trust. You've hurt me too many times. I need you to rebuild my trust. And Yankees medical staff.
Yeah, and I'm not even suggesting that the Yankees should not have made this deal. I'm sure they tried to use that injury history as a reason why they're not going to give him 6 years and only 5 years, and that obviously didn't happen. Boris was like, "No, you're giving him 6 years." Yeah. But so I mean, again, it was a signing they had to make, and I'm excited that they have him. I'm excited to see what Blake and the pitching staff or the pitching coaches do with him, because again, like I said, he's been a 2-pitch pitcher. Slider, fastball and slider, and they've been 2 of the top 50 pitches value wise in all of baseball in 2022. And so it's like, that's how he's lived. Do they try and add another pitch to his mix? I know, Ilya, you put in here on some notes that he abandoned, where was it? He abandoned his curveball at some point, right? Trying to find that. I think he abandoned his curveball, and that's when he really sort of transformed his game. Yeah, he abandoned his curveball 2 years ago, and then if you look at his numbers, that's when his numbers started to improve a lot.
Yeah, no, I like it. Go ahead, Ilya.
He was throwing a sinker too. He's still throwing the curveball just a lot less. He was throwing the sinker was the big pitch that he ditched, and that was 2 years ago, right before his numbers started.
So he ditched the sinker and he started to throw less curveballs, and he started to focus on fastball slider, which is not uncommon for today's baseball. It's just hard. Just throw the ball hard and get swings and misses. That's basically anyone who can throw hard. That's their game plan.
Yeah, and I think that simplifying the win definitely helped him out as well, and just repeatable mechanics, I'm sure, have been good for him. But I fully expect that when he comes in, they're gonna tinker with him. They're like, oh, you stopped throwing that sinker, huh? How about we throw that sinker? How about we throw that sinker? Because that's what they look at. They look at these things. They want to keep the ball in the ballpark. He's done a good job at that. So I think that for when you look at him and you see how he's improved in that average fly ball distance, 304 feet. What is that? That's over the last 2 years. That's fifth best in baseball. That's a great stat to know for Yankee Stadium.
But it's also, so the White Sox Stadium is a hitter's park.
Yep. Giant
Stadium is a pitcher's park, and now he's coming back to. I wouldn't call Yankee Stadium like a hitter's park. I think it's got a reputation as being a hitter's park because of right field. But if you're a fly ball pitcher and you can keep the ball in the gaps in center field, you're going to be okay, because it's still hard to hit home runs to center field and left center field at Yankee Stadium.
Do we have his splits, righties, lefties? That would be something interesting.
I have it right here.
What do we got?
So against right-handed batters, he is. Oh, where did it go?
I'm more so looking to see. Does he? Obviously, you'd think that the lefty is a good matchup for him, especially with Yankee Stadium and the short right port. So I think that actually translates. If he's effective against lefties, which I would assume he is, then
He's
it does
much
make
better
Yankee
against
Stadium
lefties.
more of a pitcher's park for him in particular.
Yeah, he's definitely much better against lefties. So he gives a 50 OPS plus relative to league split against lefties, and a 64 relative to league splits for righties. And then if you do his TOPS plus, which is to the we talked about this on an episode, it's to the pitcher's mean. He's 104 to righty, so a little bit worse than his average, and an 82 to lefties.
Great. So I mean, the stadium will translate to him in the way that he pitches left-handed bats well. So I think it's a good thing. I think the stadium will play well for what he does. If that came across as making any sense.
And between the low fly ball distance and his high whiff rate, which on his fastball ranked second in baseball, only behind Cole at 27.9%, MLB average is 21.5%. I don't think the Yankees should not be, Blake should not be getting Rodon Rodo in here and just completely like, oh, we got to change. Like, no, you don't need to change anything. Like, I don't want to have to sit here and talk on May 15th and he's pitching to like a 4.74 ERA about why the hell is he throwing so many sinkers, right? Like, that's what we don't want.
No, I think that the way that the Yankees and Blake have approached this is if you can benefit from this other thing that we've been, layering into guys' arsenals, then you can do it. But I don't think they force it, because for the most part, when they do apply it and it is being used, it's working, right? So there's a testing period. There's a let's dabble with some things, and I think you can do that certainly early in a season. But I think it's a good thing, because if he can unlock another pitch from him, and he has a high belief that it will be effective, that just makes him a much more dangerous pitcher and a guy that can get deeper into games by facing lineups a third and potentially fourth time in a perfect world. So it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, especially if you're tinkering with it and layering in a little bit and sticking with what has been working over the past couple of years.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of articles written in the last few days about how this Yankees rotation has the potential to be not only the best in Yankees history in a long time, but also one of the best in baseball next year. If we're going by Fangraphs projections, this is where the Yankee starters are projected to rank in Major League Baseball WAR next year. Cole 3, Rodon 4, Sevy 46, Montes 47, and Cortez 51. Maybe they're throwing some shade on Nestor Cortez at number 51.
It's just that's just his entire life. He's gonna have to. He knows that.
Well, because
he's battling adversity in everybody's mind, especially people outside the Bronx.
Nestor Cortez had 4.2 WAR in 2022, and that would rank him, somewhere in the top 10 this year. It ranked it, so it's like Cole is projected number 3 at 4.5. Cortez next year is projected only 2.2. So they're obviously projected, the stats that they're projecting that are 167 innings pitched to a 3.92 ERA and a 3.96 FIP.
Everybody, they all expect him to go back to the mean. They just expect that to happen. They're like, this can't be, like, at some point the pumpkin or the carriage is going to turn into a pumpkin. I feel like with projections for him in particular, nobody has the balls to go on there. Oh, this is actually real, and he's going to do this for 5 more years. No one has the balls to do that.
Yeah, it's difficult because I know Fangraphs doesn't just, they use, part of it is what you just said, but also is like they use the underlying metrics to try and forecast what a guy's going to do. So it's like he's not giving up hard contact, and he's still getting swings and misses and stuff like that. So it's like you should be projecting him to, if you're not going to say he's going to continue to be a top 10 pitcher in baseball, okay, but he's going to drop to number 51 seems like a pretty far drop off for Cortez. And I wouldn't even say that's necessarily would be a disappointment, because it's like, okay, if he turns back into a pumpkin, and that's not even a pumpkin, right? Being the 50th best starting pitcher in Major League Baseball is not a pumpkin.
It's not a pumpkin. As far as it going away completely, no. But I'm saying his moment, they're not expecting it to be as he has been. Because, oh, by the way, it's been a year and a half. Hasn't been just a year. He backed up what he did in the second half of 2021. So, like, he's had some there is sustained success at this level.
Right. But the rotation has a chance to do something it hasn't done in a while, which is have 2 starting pitchers with 4 or more WAR in a single season. Again, the last time that happened was CC and AJ Burnett in 2009. Going back to that parallel between this has not been a signing that Cashman has done in a really long time.
Yeah, good for him. And the Yankees just DFA'd Junior Fernandez to open up a spot for Carlos Rodon.
So I'm excited about the signing. Obviously excited about the Judge captaincy. Anything else you wanna touch on?
No, I can't. I think that there's another move to be rumored. Hal says he's not done yet. That's another thing to come out of this.
They can't be done yet.
Can't be done yet. But what's the next move? It's got to be a trade, right?
If they if this is the final team, this is, right? I mean,
well,
are you satisfied?
They need a left fielder. So are they going to trade market for the left fielder, or are they going dumpster diving with some of the guys that we've talked about? Conforto, I think the Arizona guys would be via trade, or my guy David Peralta. That's what you're looking at right now. Conforto doesn't do it for me, honestly.
No,
I don't like the way his numbers are. He would be another reclamation project. His last full year was not impressive at all. I don't really buy the whole oh yeah, he's gonna sign and then just be awesome and be really motivated because he's giving me no more of that. Just give me something that's a known commodity, and if you have to go out and make a trade, then do it. We have multiple high level shortstop prospects right now. Go deal one of them and get us a left fielder that's good.
Yeah, and so left field is obviously should be a priority. Brendan Cuddy put out earlier this week that in speaking with Yankees vice president of player development at the winter meetings, that he believes that the Yankees are going to go into next year with IKF and Peraza as their plan at shortstop.
Yeah.
So that's what they're doing at shortstop. And then, no surgery for DJ.
Until Volpe blows everybody away in spring training and just takes that job. Because that will be an opportunity. There's nothing more for him to prove. I don't understand why that's not being a consideration as a talking point. Maybe they don't want the overlying pressure for what he's doing. But at the end of the day, we all know what the pressure is. The pressure is on him to be the shortstop for the future. Everybody knows that. So, whether you talk about it going into spring training or you don't, everybody still knows that he's the guy that everybody's going to be looking at.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between basically announcing, hey, you're in a battle versus just letting that battle play out.
Sure. And the good thing, DJ not having surgery, if that's what they're saying, that he's healing up the way that they want, that's great. Because again, that's the ideal situation without not having surgery, full, rehabbing it to full mobility. And again, hopefully they believe that it's something that's not going to reoccur, because if something does come back, this is the fear that if something does come back, if he gets a setback, surgery is going to happen. And then he's going to be on the shelf for a while.
So let me ask you this for the shortstop thing. Cause you said why not mention Volpe in that conversation? Yeah. If Volpe, IKF and Peraza basically all have the same level of spring training.
Yeah.
It's all solid, nothing spectacular, but not disastrous. It's good. Who's the shortstop?
It should be Volpe.
So you don't think that Volpe would need to do something better than Peraza or IKF?
Why? If he's the same and you're looking at him as
but he wasn't
talented,
mentioned. He's not being mentioned as. I don't give a shit about
it. Again, I think they're downplaying it, but they're talking about who's currently there, and who's come up. I don't know. I don't even know why IKF is going to be a guy mentioned because he's on the roster, but he's a better utility guy than he is a starting shortstop. I think all of us agree with that. He has value at that point. If he's the starting shortstop on opening day, there's going to be a lot of people that are unhappy about that.
I don't think you can have IKF as the
if you have them all the same. Why would you not put your top rated shortstop prospect as that guy and give him the full opportunity to come in, surrounded by a very good lineup, getting, you'd think, a lot of a lot of strikes. You're probably going to get a lot of balls over the plate and have an opportunity to hit. In fact, I'd say it would be better for his development to be in the major leagues than AAA at that point.
Yeah, I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't know. Because the only reason would be because Peraza is a safer pick.
Yeah. Well, maybe they're also saying that so that they can trade Peraza.
Maybe. Yeah, that's true. Trade Peraza for a left fielder and then
or trade
Volpe.
Maybe they're trading Volpe. Who knows? One of those guys should be traded. If there's a deal out there that can get you something to improve the team right now, then you do it.
You have to. You can't play. You're not in a long game anymore. I know you just signed some long contracts, but you're not in a long game anymore. You're in a win yesterday mode.
But at the shortstop position, they are in a long game. So you just got to pick the right guy.
Yeah,
because they are in a long game with the position of shortstop.
But you don't need two of them.
Right. You got to pick the right guy. You got to be right. You can't be wrong on this one. You got to be right on this one. It's a big deal. That's like, we're looking at opportunities and like where the Yankees have as far as decisions. And like, that's a massive, massive, massive. I think it's actually a little underplayed at this point, but they have to be right with their scouting and their metrics and all of these things that they're spending money on to evaluate players. They better be goddamn right with whichever one of these guys is the guy that they believe in. And especially if they trade one of them away, they need to be right.
Well, that's maybe that is by not trading, but maybe by not trading one of them, that they're just allowing the decision to happen. It's no longer their decision. It's like they're both battling, and whichever one wins.
Fine.
It's
I'm okay with that too, because then you still have time to trade the other one. And he still has value. I mean, maybe it's not as much because you have a guy there, but still, I think because of the shortstop position, you're not going to lose a ton of leverage because it's a position of strength. It's a position of importance for everybody, and everybody needs a young shortstop. So if you have the ability to get one, like, I don't think their leverage is that cut off from making still a significant move if they believe if both of those guys are highly touted. So I don't think it hurts them as much. I think it's better for the organization for them to figure it out and be right with it, and then trade the other guy, even if it's a little bit of a diminished value. They have to be right with who they run out there.
Yeah. It's like, what do you in left field? Do you try and move Hicks away to alleviate some salary so you can then bring on some salary because they're bumped up right now?
I don't give a fuck about salary anymore. We can't. When we look across now, what Cohen's doing, and you're looking to see what's happening, you just need to get the guy in left field. Whether it's not really free agency at this point, you're looking at a trade.
Yeah, no, but I mean, if I don't know, they could still, in theory, acquire a left fielder, move Hicks, apart half of Hicks's $10 million salary, and stay under that top threshold. That might be something Hal Steinbrenner wants to do.
It just shouldn't be position number one. It shouldn't be the level of importance of making sure that the player is what the Yankees need. That number one priority. Make sure you get the player that fits the system. Make sure you get the player that helps them improve. And gives them the best opportunity to win. If you cut salary by doing that, awesome. If you don't, who gives a shit?
All right, that's going to wrap up today's show. As I said, check out that throwback history episode from a couple years ago. I was starting to listen to it to refresh my memory on why there was confusion about how many Yankee captains there's been. It's interesting stuff. So check it out. It's about a 20-minute listen, pretty quick. Fun news today. We'll talk to you guys.
New captain, baby.
Merry Christmas to everyone. I know that's
Happy
coming
Hanukkah,
up before
Merry
the next
Christmas.
time
Yes.
all that good stuff. We'll talk to you guys next week.